All right, let's dive into one of the most fascinating and honestly kind of strange chapters in the Bible, Leviticus 21. This is where God lays out these incredibly high standards for his priests. We're talking super strict rules about who they could marry, how they could mourn, even about their physical bodies. And you read this stuff today and think, what is that all about? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack, the amazing spiritual picture that God was painting through these laws. So as you start reading through all these detailed rules, you can't help but ask, right? Why did the priest have to be so perfect? I mean, the standards were incredibly high, almost impossibly high. That's the big question, and that's what we're digging into.
Okay, so to make sense of any of these rules, we've got to start with the one big idea that just unlocks this whole chapter, and it's this. It all comes down to a call for holiness.
Here's a great way to think about it. The priests, they were basically God's ambassadors here on earth. You know, they were the go-betweens, standing in the gap between a completely holy God and the people of Israel. And just like any ambassador today, their whole life, how they acted, the choices they made, even how they looked, it all had to reflect the one they were representing. It had to point back to God.
And to really get this, we have to look at what the word holy actually means. In the original Hebrew, the word is kadosh. Now, we often think of holy as just meaning morally perfect, but that's not the primary meaning here. At its root, it means to be set apart, to be different. The priests were called to be set apart for God, belonging completely to Him for this sacred job. You got to get this idea, because it is the key to everything else in this chapter.
So with that foundation in mind, this idea of being set apart, let's look at the first group of rules. You'll see they all revolve around this one powerful theme: separating the priests from anything to do with death or defilement.
Now, when you read the laws about mourning or touching the dead, it might seem a little harsh, right? Like God was telling them to be unfeeling. But it's not that at all. It was actually a powerful visual lesson for everyone. It was a constant reminder that the priests served the God of life. Their whole job was about life and atonement, a completely separate world from the death and decay that came into the world through sin.
And you can really see God's compassion here, because He wasn't asking them to be robots. The regular priests weren't banned from all mourning. The law actually made a specific allowance for their closest family, their mom, dad, kids, brother, and even their unmarried sister. It's this beautiful balance, isn't it? It honors their sacred set-apart role, but it also acknowledges their real human feelings. Even their family life was meant to be a picture of this holiness. The marriage rules, they were all about symbolizing a pure, undivided devotion to God. By marrying a virgin from among their own people, the priest's home was supposed to be a living example of a total commitment to God and His covenant, without any outside influences or divided loyalties. Okay, so if you thought the standard for the regular priests was high, well, the standard for the high priest was on another level entirely. It was absolute. And that's because his job was so unique, especially on the Day of Atonement, that it required an even greater degree of being set apart.
And this next part just shows the difference so clearly. Just look at the contrast. A regular priest could mourn for his immediate family, right? But the high priest? Nope. None. He was forbidden from going near any dead body, not even his own mom or dad. The standard for him was just completely uncompromising.
Get this. Verse 12 says he couldn't even leave the sanctuary to mourn. Can you even imagine that? His duties to God and to the people were so important, so absolute that literally nothing, not even the deepest personal grief, was allowed to interrupt them. He had to be a living, breathing symbol of continuous communion with God. All right, now we're getting to a part of the chapter that, honestly, can be really tough for us to read today. I'm talking about the rules regarding physical blemishes. And it is so important that we understand what's going on here symbolically.
So let's be absolutely crystal clear about this. This was never about God saying someone was less valuable because of their physical body. Not at all. The entire sacrificial system was built on powerful visual symbols. Think about it. The animal being sacrificed had to be perfect, without any blemish. So to complete that picture, the priest offering it also had to be physically whole. It was all about creating this powerful image, a perfect offering being presented to a perfect God.
And the chapter gets really specific, listing things like blindness or being lame or having a broken arm or leg. And I know it's hard to read, but we have to keep remembering this wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a judgment on the person's worth. It was all about keeping that symbolic picture intact, that picture of the absolute perfection and wholeness needed to approach a holy God.
And here's a really important detail that just shows God's heart in all this.
A priest with a blemish wasn't just kicked out, no way. He could still eat the holy food, the bread of his God. He was still part of the family, still provided for. He just couldn't serve right at the altar, so that symbolic picture of perfection wouldn't be broken.
So, when you pull it all together, you see that every single one of these rules, the ones about mourning, about marriage, about physical condition, they're all pointing back to one big, central, unshakable idea.
And this one verse, man, it just says it all. God himself gives the reason. Why all these rules? Why must the priest be holy? He says, "For I, the Lord, which sanctify you, am holy." It's all a reflection of his character. He's the one who sets them apart, and their lives were supposed to show what that looked like.
And in the end, that's the whole point. These impossibly high standards were a massive lesson for Israel, and they're a lesson for us too. They painted this vivid picture that no human, in all our imperfection, could ever meet God's perfect standard on our own. It showed everyone just how desperately we needed the one who could, our perfect high priest, Jesus Christ. He's the one who fulfilled every single one of these symbols perfectly for us.
So that leaves us with a really important question to think about, doesn't it? If all these ancient rules were about being set apart to reflect God's perfect holiness, what does that look like for us today? In our lives right now, what does it really mean to be set apart for Him?